guys, my name's Chris Smith. Welcome to day 50 of my saxophone journey. So 50 days ago I bought this saxophone and started to learn to read music and learn to play the saxophone. And today what I wanted to share with you is a little bit about scales. So I remember from when my daughters were learning to play instruments that, they would often say, oh God, I've got to learn scales again. And, it wasn't a kind of a great fun part of their learning. But certainly from my teachers, I've learned, they've explained to me why it's so important to learn the scales. So I want to try and explain to you why it's important to learn the scales. And then secondly, the way that I've been learning the scales, and I've only just started, so I'm just going to demonstrate 3 scales just to give you an idea. The way that I've been learning them, and this is kind of just the way I've been kind of taught. So hopefully if it works for me, then it might work for you as well. So firstly, why are scales important? So when you learn a scale, typically you're starting off with a note, so it could be a C for example, and you just go all the way up the octave and all the way back down again. And there are 12 major scales, and the reason that they're really important is it's not just learning the fingering on how it works, it's learning the different keys that are used, the different notes that are used in each scale. Because when a composer writes a piece of music, he will write it in the key of something. So you'll hear people talk about the key of C or the key of A or the key of G. And what that tells you as a musician is which scale you'll be using the notes from. So when you're then playing that song, you kind of don't need to worry about every single note on the saxophone or whatever instrument it is, because you're only going to be playing on a particular key, so you're only going to be using a certain number of the keys, of the notes. So it just narrows down the notes that you're having to concentrate on. If you're also wanting to be a jazz musician and you want to improvise a lot, then learning the scales will allow you to improvise really well when the rest of the band or whatever are playing in a key of whatever it happens to be. So that's the why. Now, the way I've been learning the scales is there's two ways to find out what keys you should be learning. So let me just show you this. This is what I've been using. As I say, there's 2 different ways, a kind of a simple way and a better way, if that makes sense. So hopefully you can see that okay. If you can find just somewhere where it says, you can find this on the internet fairly easy, that's exactly what I did, the music notation for each of the 12 scales. That's a really useful way of playing and learning the scales, because you're learning to read music at the same time. When I first started off, I couldn't read music, so I got this one here, which basically just tells you the notes to play. So you don't have to kind of transpose them. In my mind, I was trying to think, where's that note on the stave? Is that in a space or a line? Which key does that mean? So it's taken me forever to play the scale. So I was using that. But as you get better at reading music, or if you can already read music, then I'd recommend you go for that one. So once you've got the scale, there's 12 different ones, 12 different major scales. I'm not going to talk about minor scales at all today. The 12 different major scales, the easiest way to learn them is to start off with the simplest scale, which is the one with no sharps or flats. So that's called the C major scale. It's basically just using the basic keys. As well as the C major scale, the next one, which just has 1 sharp, is called the G major scale. And then there's the scale which has 1 flat is called the F major scale. So that they're kind of mostly the same keys as the C major scale, but with maybe 1 difference. So that's a kind of a gentle way to gradually change what you're doing, rather than diving straight into one of the scales which has got loads of sharps and flats that you might not even know how the fingering is yet. So that's the way to choose which one to work on next. So I would suggest start off with C major, and then G major, and then F major. And when you're playing them, I tend to go through kind of 2 phases, or 3 phases really. So the first is just learn to play it in an order. So start off at the low note on the scale. So a C major scale, you start off on the saxophone, it's on low C. And just work out the fingering. Don't worry about the speed, just kind of get it to the point where you can play it all the way up to middle C and then all the way back down again. And if you can do that 2 or 3 times without making a mistake, what I would then suggest is you then start to do it with a metronome. And just set the metronome on a low speed, so typically 60 beats per minute at the beginning, just to start to try to follow a beat. And then once you can play it up or down twice, this is what I'm doing. So once I can play it up and down twice with the metronome without making a mistake, I will then increase the metronome speed to 75 beats per minute. Then I'll increase it to 100 beats per minute, and then 120 beats per minute. And if once I can get to 120 beats per minute and play up and down the scale twice without making a mistake, then I feel that I know that scale well enough to be able to move on to learn the next one. So as I said, there's 12 altogether. Start off with number 1, then 2, then 3, and that'll keep you busy for a little while. Depends how quick you learn, obviously. I don't think I'm a particularly fast learner, but anyway. So what I'm going to try and do now is demonstrate how I play the scales with the metronome, and I always kind of say the scale out loud to myself as I'm about to play it, because what I'm trying to embed in my mind is not just these are the keys that I'm doing, but that this is the key of G, and let's say, and it has 1 sharp and it's the F sharp. So by saying that out loud, I'm kind of reinforcing it, and then I'll play it. So I'll try and demonstrate that to you now. Okay, so the first one I'm going to play is the C major scale, which has no flats or sharps. So that was C major. The next one I'm going to play is the G major scale. So that starts and ends on the G. And the G major scale has 1 sharp, which is F sharp. So here we go. Oh, I'm going to do that once more. Sorry. So second time around, that was the G major scale with just a 1 sharp with the F sharp. And now I'm going to play the F major scale, which has just got 1 flat, and that's the B flat. So I'll start off on F. So let me just turn this off. So I would just now repeat doing those scales for, gradually increasing the speed until I can play them up and down twice, and then move on to the next one. So I hope you found that really useful, guys. If you'd like to subscribe to any of my other videos, you can subscribe to my channel just by clicking on this button here. And I've created a little playlist of all the different videos that I've created using scales, just talking about scales. So if you're working your way through your scales now and you'd like to see how I do it, then you can just find that list here and watch whichever videos are useful to you then. Okay guys, bye for now.